And I put a little lipstick on and I did my hair. So aren't you happy that I did that? Okay. You probably clicked on this video because you wanted my thoughts on what to do about it if you have too many whips or UFOs. And if you're not familiar with those, that terminology, WIPS stands for Works in Progress, and UFO stands for Unfinished Objects. So, this is a thing that I guess I never truly have suffered with tremendously, but I can identify with, and the thing that I suffered from was never really starting. I mean, I did have unfinished objects laying around. It wasn't like I had 11 million of them, but I would not ever start anything new because I felt guilty, and I thought that I was supposed to be a super monogamous knitter, so I just had one unfinished sweater laying around for years, and I didn't knit very much because I was kind of a perfectionist about it. So you may identify with that, or you may be, like many people in this community are, a person who, you know, loves knitting for the process of it, like we all do, and gets constantly inspired and wants to cast on all the things. And I don't blame you, I want to cast on all the things all the time too. But I am actually pretty good at finishing a lot of my whips, or all of them actually, and I thought that it might help you if I talked about like how I do that and what my strategy, what my thinking is. It really doesn't come from a place of like trying to be restrictive. It's a mindset shift that has given me a lot more freedom actually, and a lot more creative expression, and a lot more joy, and a lot more pride. And so I will go into it. These are my notes. Lots of us have too many whips because, number one, inspiration strikes us mid-project, and you know, you have an instantaneous draw to like something different. Number two, often, you know, like you're mid-project and you're kind of over the excitement of it, you get bored and you put it down, you know, that happens to everybody, and then you want to knit on something more exciting. I find that what often happens to me, or pretty much always happens to me, is that I'm like mid-project, and then I'll start to second guess my choices. You know, I'll be like with this sweater, for example, I did that. Like, I was just sort of, what was I thinking with the color? Am I crazy? You know, and then, you know, I would try this on. I think this sweater has that effect on a lot of people because it's oversized, but it looks so big when you're in the middle of knitting it, and I was just like, first of all, the color is not going to look good on me, or so I thought, and secondly, it's going to be so big that I'm swimming in it, or so I thought. This is The Weekender by Andrea Mowry, if you're curious. So that happens, and then the third thing that I wrote down that sometimes happens, which is why we like put things down and we cast on something new, is perfectionism. And that's like perfectionism about mistakes, perfectionism about fit. It could be any number of things. When we have too many whips, though, we feel overwhelmed, stressed out, and guilty. And you know, a lot of people say just like, you have to knit what makes you happy, and if like your current project is not bringing you joy, then cast on something else, because the point of knitting is to make you happy. And that like totally makes logical sense, and I really agree with it to a certain degree. But I sort of, I mean, like, I also believe that if we have so many whips that it's making us feel overwhelmed and stressed out, your knitting doesn't bring you as much joy as it should, even if it's something that new that you're excited about. Like, cause I sort of feel and have noticed, you know, that like, if I have so many whips going on, even if I cast on something that I'm really, really, really excited about, that's new, and like, you know, drop what I'm working on to do that, like the excitement will wear off quicker than it would otherwise. So then you're just adding another whip to your pile of unfinished ones. So anyway, what really got me, helps me a lot and got me out of the cycle of perfectionism, like, you know, perfectionism kind of keeping me from doing anything, which was really what my problem was before, was this story that I kind of have talked about a couple of times before, but I'll have to do a whole video just on this. My boyfriend, who's also a creative person, he told me this story about a pottery, like a study done with like pottery students, where they split people into two groups, and one group was told to, you know, don't worry about how many pots you make, just try to make them as good as possible, as perfect as possible. And then the other group, they said, like, make as many mistakes, like don't worry about making mistakes, just make as many pots as you can. And ultimately, the people who didn't worry about making mistakes were the ones who got better. Not only did they make more pots, but they were better in the end. So, and I imagine, not from reading the story, but from like talking to my boyfriend about it, I imagine that that's because they, I don't know, just practiced. They got an opportunity to practice more, and they learned from that, and so their skills grew. So what I have found in applying this to my own work is, like, even if it's not, for me, the biggest challenge, honestly, is not like making mistakes and fixing them, but the biggest challenge is really choosing things that I will like, which doesn't seem like it would be that hard, but I feel like oftentimes it is really hard for us to get to know what we actually like, and like, even if we know, you know, we don't always think about it, and then it's sometimes really hard to like get up to that level. It's that whole Ira Glass quote that I also like to talk about a lot, that's like, you know, when you're a creative person, your taste is really good, but your skills don't match your taste yet, because you haven't had a ton of practice and you're not there yet. So you have to like just practice getting as much work out there as you can until your skills do match up. And I have noticed that applying this philosophy like has really helped me make things that I like, you know, a lot more regularly. But like, I'm not here to tell you this is the one way you have to do anything. Like, if it brings you joy to like start a million things, you know, and not finish them, like, more power to you. I will probably say that in all of my instructional videos, because I hate prescriptive advice. I do not believe there is one right way for everybody. I just wanted to talk about the way that works for me, because I feel like it's like a unique perspective, and it really works for me. So if I can help you a little bit, that's great. So yeah, I wrote down some concrete steps to tackle your enormous pile of whips. So number one is KonMari them, of course. So here's the thing. I feel like the KonMari philosophy is like, if it doesn't bring you joy, toss it. With knitting, I mean, you put so much of yourself into it. So it's a lot harder to let go of things that are, you know, it's almost as if they're sentimental items. But if you have really an enormous pile of things that you haven't finished, you want to reduce the amount of overwhelm and try to actually do it, you know. So if it helps you to KonMari them and like get them all out and get rid of some, basically, I mean, then I support it. And I've done that myself, and it's really a successful thing to like propel me forward in terms of like actually finishing stuff. So the way to do this that I suggest is to, you know, get all your projects, put them in one place on like the living room floor or your bed or whatever. And also, really importantly, like take them all out of the bags. Take all of your projects out of the project bags, at least for temporary purposes. And so you can really, really, really look and see what you've got going on. So at that point, you know, you would like pick each one up and be like, does this bring me joy? Or like, you know, pay attention to the way it makes your body feel. Like if you pick it up and say like, I really was excited to finish this, and I feel guilty that I haven't gotten back to it, you know, it's probably worth finishing. If you feel like, I was really excited to finish this, but like I think my tastes have changed, like, and I don't want it anymore, it's probably worth ripping it out and like either reusing the yarn for something else if you still love the yarn, or just getting rid of the yarn entirely. You know, and then you have like nice projects to look forward to that bring you joy. So anyway, that's a really important thing, just to really make the task an achievable one, which I already said. Okay, so once you've done that, they're still gonna not be in the project bags, okay? So the first, if you have like a whip that you really, really are loving working on right now and you have momentum, like I don't want you to stop and work on this instead. Momentum is the key thing here that you want to go for. So like finish that one first, you know, get the high from finishing that, and then move on to tackling all of your old projects. But the first project I want you to tackle is the one that is the closest to being finished. Maybe you have a project that's like totally done, but you just haven't woven in the ends or blocked it. Weave in the ends. And block it maybe, but more thoughts on that in a minute. You know, maybe you have a project that's like just the ribbing left, or just like half of a sleeve left or something. Finish that one first. And that's really important because, you know, again, the high that you get, it's like literally a dopamine rush. You do get a high from accomplishing things. So do finish it, that one first, and then you'll move on to, you know, like I would put them in order by like how much work you have left on them. So you would finish the one that's like almost done first, and then the next one would be something that has a smaller amount of work on it than the one, you know, following. Don't start with like a scrappy blanket that you only have a strip of and you want it to be for a king size bed. Like, that is advanced level, you know, finishing. That's the last project you should do. Anyway, I teased the whole blocking thing. I have to say, something that has really helped me gain momentum and like move through this process is I actually don't block things that much anymore. Like, obviously, if it's something where it's lace, you know, sometimes brioche, like, or something where it will change the shape dramatically or like the stitch pattern dramatically if you block it, and like for it to be beautiful you have to block it, yes, block it. Or if it's not something that, you know, really stands in your way, like whatever. But I found, go for it. But I found for me that something that was standing in my way a lot all the time was blocking or weaving in ends and blocking. And because those two things were paired in my mind, I would finish things and then I would leave them and I would never do anything. And I wouldn't be able to wear them because it was like, you know, or I would wear them and like there was a tail hanging out. And that's fine if that's how you want to, like, if that's how you want to wear it, like, I don't want to judge you at all. But for me, it made me feel sloppy a little bit, you know, or like embarrassed. Like, and so if it makes you feel that way, like, I'm just saying, maybe just weave in the ends. Okay, so number 3, moving forward, this is really, really, really important. Don't get fussy about mistakes, fit, color, etc. Even if you don't think, if you're not sure you're gonna like it, like, I prioritize finishing it because I know how important the feeling of finishing is for me, for my momentum, for my creative, like, life, you know, for my practice. I think that, you know, if you put in all of the effort towards finishing a project, chances are that, like, when it's all finished, you might like it, you know, even if you didn't think you would. And then also, like, even if you don't like it and you end up donating it to Goodwill or something, like, you've learned something. You've learned, like, ask yourself why you don't like it, but, like, you've probably learned what not to do next time, you know, when choosing yarn or choosing like whatever. You've probably learned something. So, like, it's really important to me to finish things for that reason, because I think that it makes me a better artist, a better knitter, a better designer. So in order to do that, I do the best I can to not be precious about things and to just, like, have it be an experiment in finishing. So, okay, number 4, basically these are all just suggestions about how to keep yourself going now, because really the strategy is just to pick the one that's almost done, start with that, and then keep going. Like snowball, you know, it's like the whole snowballing, paying off debts thing that people say to do. Or like when I was in school, my mom would always tell me, like, and I was overwhelmed about homework, my mom would always tell me to, like, start with the easiest thing first. It's the same strategy, because, like, if you get a win under your belt, like, you're gonna feel excited about it and it's gonna keep you moving. So importantly, to, like, emphasize the feeling, you know, that you get, and, like, to really, like, solidify those neurons in your brain and that chemical connection in your brain of, like, being excited that you've finished something. It's really important to celebrate your victory. So once you finish the thing, whatever it is, like, fucking run around the house and, like, get some high fives and stuff, you know, and, like, wear it and, like, take a photo of yourself. Whatever you do to celebrate your victory, I actually mark it in my calendar when I'm like, into bullet journaling, so like I mark it in my like monthly log when I finish something, and then I get to look back through that month and be like, oh my god, look, and it's like, look how many things that I finished this month. So if you have been following me for a while, I released a video a couple of, like last month, about how to get more done in 2019. And I had a really ambitious, for me, goal of making 3 sweaters in the first 3 months of the year, or like in the winter time, basically. And I made 1.5. Not so bad, you know, but I don't like feel upset about it. And I knew that I wouldn't. Like, I knew that it was just an ambitious goal because I wanted to get myself excited, and if I didn't meet it, like, that was totally fine. But, you know, I was feeling down on myself for like taking so long to finish that one. I had a really ambitious goal of knitting 3 sweaters in the wintertime, and I was feeling down on myself about not doing that, or not being able to achieve that, or like the one I knit and finished took 1.5 months, 2 months almost entirely. And so I was feeling bad about myself, but like then when I looked at my bullet journal and I saw the log of how many other things that I had finished, you know, like small knitting projects, little sewing projects, books, stuff like that, I was like, oh, I'm awesome, you know? So I encourage you to try that. Like, that's been really helping me. But also, any way you want to celebrate your victory, it's like really important to actually celebrate the victory, really, really feel it. Because that'll help you gain momentum and move forward. So if you are tempted to cast on something new, I encourage you to write down that idea, like write exactly what yarn you want to use, you know, shop for the yarn but don't buy it yet, like take screenshots, put it in your queue, whatever you want to do. And use that excitement to like finish your current project. I know that's annoying to hear, but it's true. It helps. The other thing you can do is, if you already have the yarn, cake the yarn. You know, like, it's okay to take small steps towards setting yourself up for that next project while you're still working on finishing your current project. The other thing I do, which I've talked about before, is I will take a break from my current whip to swatch for the next project. And then once I have finished my current whip, like when I get around to finally starting, like I will have already made a swatch and like it will be washed and dried, and I'll be like, ah, I was so great and prepared and wonderful, you know? So that really helps. The thing is, if this is the first time that you've ever done this, I do highly encourage you to complete the process. And if you can, unless there's something enormous like a blanket that you're working on, finish everything. Because, you know, you get these minor rushes and like, you know, really big senses like of accomplishment along the way, but the feeling that you get when everything is done is immeasurable. It's like the highest of highs, you know, and you can like be so proud of yourself. The thing is that sometimes I find that like my best creative ideas come when I'm in the process of making something else. So when you just like don't give into that urge and you like finish everything, like I feel concerned for myself about like having a lull, you know? And I know that, I mean, it's happened before where it's like I finished it, it's so great, and then it's like I'm not like ready to jump into something and I don't necessarily want to, and then you can lose your mojo, and that's a whole other problem entirely. This might happen, it might not happen, but like, if it does, I don't think mojo is that hard to get back, and I can talk about that again in another video. But anyway, moving forward, the strategy is, it's really all, like, I'm not trying to encourage you to be a monogamous knitter. I don't think that that's the best way to live. It's just more of a strategy to keep the number of works in progress that you have going manageable. So I have like two sweaters on the needles right now, and that's it. So, you know, I'm not a monogamous knitter. That does not bring me joy, that way of living. Although, like, working primarily on one project at a time is I have found the most effective way to get that project done, like, obviously. But yeah, it's not about like just becoming a monogamous knitter. It's about, like, you know, experiencing this spree where you really get addicted to finishing things, and then sort of like also letting yourself dive back into casting all of the things, and then just like doing the whole process over and over again. That might sound like crazy to you, but for me, that's just like the way to live the most passionate, artistic, creative knitting lifestyle that I can. And it's the way for me that, yeah, makes me feel the most creative and also the most productive all at the same time. Again, talking about this past winter when I had that ambitious goal of making 3 sweaters in the winter, it came out of a frustration with the previous year, where I had like had a lot of knitting time, but I really just made a lot of like little projects, and I finished them all, but it was just like, where are my sweaters? Like, I don't have any sweaters to show for it, which is why I specifically wanted to make sweaters. But then, like, when I was a couple of weeks into working towards that goal, you know, I felt like really restricted, like, and I was sort of like, well, fuck it, like, I'll cast on something new. I mean, I started to like brainstorm all these things, and I actually came up with a lot of stuff that was like projects that I could do with what I already had in stash. So I like found a loophole in my, you know, rules, and I was like, well, it's totally okay to cast on something new if I, you know, am using stash. And the thing that I found by letting myself, like giving myself that wiggle room, for lack of a better term, is that when I did let myself like dive into casting on some new stuff, and I didn't cast on like 7 things, I probably cast on 3 things, but when I did let myself dive into that, it really got the creative juices flowing again. And then I got to a point where I was like a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of works in progress that I had, and then I wanted to finish my sweater that I had been working on before. So like that got me motivated to finish the thing that was on my list that was like so close to being done. So, you know, it's all about balance. It's all about knowing yourself. Be gentle on yourself. Like, this kind of change doesn't happen overnight, but I'm just trying to emphasize that, like, even if you don't think that it's something that you're gonna love or wear, it's really like the value of the pride that you get from finishing something is like really, really worthwhile to experience. So keep on knitting, keep moving forward. I'm gonna open a thread in my Ravelry group, which has not been active for a while. Kind of a very casual knit along to talk about the subject of too many whips. So it will be a knit along. I mean, so it's just gonna work like almost every other knit along, so you can post photos and talk about your progress, you know, talk about how it's working for you, how it's not working for you. It's basically for people out there who feel like they need a little more support, who want to talk to me about what they're working on and like how this process is working for them. And, you know, I'll be there to give you virtual high fives. So I don't think that there's going to be a prize at the end, but, you know, I'm just gonna keep this going indefinitely. So even if you're watching this video and it's been a long time since I first released it, you can still go to my Ravelry group on Ravelry, obviously. It's Slow Fashion Rebel, and talk to people who are doing this crazy, big, ambitious thing. I feel like the one exception to like doing this might be in a situation where you're like coming out of a depression and like all that stuff reminds you of like some very bad times in your life and maybe you just want to shut the door. So I want to be conscious that like this is not always like the best strategy or the best thing to do. But if you're just trying to work on like your productivity and finishing stuff, I highly encourage it and I support you. All right, I gotta wrap this up because this is an epic video now, and I'm losing the light, but thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for forgiving me for my video not being like the most perfect, beautiful thing. Hopefully someday they will be. But for now, I just wanna see you a little more often. So thank you so much for stopping by and I'll see you later. Bye.